Before we get too Nuxt though, we'll introduce ourselves. Both Tim and I, we're from the Digital Design and Innovation Group at the Department of Premier and Cabinet at the Victorian Government. I'm a Drupal developer and have been since 2011, but I've been doing a lot more front-end stuff since moving across to DPC, just filling a gap for the last 6 months, I suppose, which has been really good. Playing with new stuff's always fun. Getting to grips with that and seeing what the front-end community does, and Nuxt is awesome for me as a back-end person because it's that middle point between the pure front-end stuff and back-end, so it's server-side rendering. Tim, you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks. Who am I? My name is Tim Yao. I'm a web developer working both back-end and front-end. I also work with Drupal. I have been working with Drupal since Drupal 6. I think it's 5 years now. But recently, this year, I mostly work in front-end, which is provide a solution for the headless Drupal. What we are using at the moment is basically JavaScript, Node.js, including Vue.js and the Nuxt.js. So that's the one we are talking today. I personally also a fan of Lego. In my spare time, I play a lot with Lego. It's awesome. So I think we need to think about that, Lego, why Lego go to success. And it's really because they made a good job. So there's an article there talking about the learn from Lego. Anybody interested can have a look. I borrowed some images they made there, so you can see whatever the Lego brick have, how many pegs, and they always have the consistent padding, which is make the design consistent, the result. With that design, you can make a UI, a layout, always possible. You don't will have the situation like two Lego they cannot put together, right? So and the results always consistent. Think about the engineering part. We are software engineer, and actually Lego is very good at engineering as well. This is somebody made they called a Lego module. So you can see how a Lego module works is just similar to what we are building in software. Take some input and make some output before that, and they play the balls and process it. The fun part is with. Can I go to the next?
Part's making it.
So the fun part is with this module system, with software engineer, both Lego engineer, and they can make big and project. It makes everything can be agile, can be open source. Oops. So think about it, we are always doing some more complicated and bigger enterprise level project. So the module system can help us to do that, to prevent us to reinventing wheels. And when you know the front end part at the moment is developing very fast. So with the module, we can replace them and catch up with the latest technology. Everything is possible. I think here everybody familiar with Drupal modules, Node.js modules, and we are lucky today we're talking Nuxt.js, which is using module system as well. So in this design patterns, it solves our project problem, which Guy will introduce the next part. Thanks.
So what is that project? The project that we've both been working on well, Tim a little bit longer than me. I came onto this SDP project in March this year. We're only going to gloss over it a little bit. There's Kurt Foster giving a presentation tomorrow morning at 10 who's talking more about the technology of SDP. And then there's our director giving the keynote this afternoon, and that's Jit Benaragama. And he's talking about that high level of why Drupal, why is it good for SDP. So we should probably answer the question of what SDP is first and why it relates to modular architecture. It's a single digital presence, which is all about making it easier for people to find, understand and use government information. And there's lots of benefits to doing that. But what was the business case? Online became Victorians' primary source for finding government information and completing the tasks where they have to interact with government. A lot of the time, people are only interacting with government because they need to. And so we need to make that as easy as possible. And so it becomes about being consistent. So these are the major advantages of moving to a consolidated project. Getting more done for less, which allows for more spend on innovation rather than duplication. Collaboration across agencies. So already we've taken inspiration from other agencies, Today, Salsa, even other Drupal projects where we've seen them integrating decoupled and headless projects, and we can learn from them and leverage the work they've already done, which feeds into that idea of continuous improvement. And then write once, share everywhere. So syndication and keeping consistent. And consistency helps ease of use. And this is where we get into the platform that we developed to enable these things. We've got Bay, which is the hosting part of it. That's also the continuous integration, continuous development and deployment. Tide, which is the Drupal aspect of it. That's the API, the content API. And then there's that presentation layer, the front end, Ripple components. Now those components need to be used somehow. Everyone's lost their heads. Everyone's like gone decoupled. There's lots of reasons why. Probably don't want to cover that because there's so much to cover in Nuxt, but it's a common theme in development now to separate our back ends and front ends. And one of the reasons which Tim will talk to is the patterns, the modules, and how to reuse things.
Thanks. I will continue this part. So I think everybody have here, if they work on the big project, have like especially decoupled, have multiple vertical sides, you will facing the problem of consistent UI things. And I think there is solution like people's building style guides, pattern library. So we made our one. So this is, I think, a common solution. You can see here we have a very good, we say we are not designing pages. We are designing systems of components. So this is, I think, a really popular concept now. But there is a problem. So building a pattern library at the moment, there's no very clear methodology, structure them, everybody do them own. That's why we got the atomic design. So yes, there is image shows, but we go to next one. This is a video clearly showing what is atomic design methodology. So they organize different components into different groups. So the basic one will be atoms, like button, input element, then they assemble it to a search form, and then go to header. Just basically a different level, organize them together, which make the structure much clearer. So that two things help us to build the UI and help us to solve the problem of a consistent UI. The next one. So,
what other problems do we have?
but actually there's more and more problems. We have to do them one by one like this. So first we got the atomic design and the components, the pattern library, which solves our problems for the UI, and we need to find a JavaScript framework. The JavaScript is the language for front-end. We are working in headless Drupal. So instead of using PHP or other languages, we feel JavaScript is really good. The one we found is Vue.js. There's a lot of projects in government also using the Vue.js as the pattern library, like WorkSafe. So you can find other things like React or Angular or even PHP Laravel can do that thing, but just choose the one suit for your team, your project. Vue.js can do the progressive framework, so it helps us test it in our existing Drupal project. And when we feel comfortable, then we move to build an individual product for that. So we solved all these three problems. Go to the next one. Then so the JavaScript is running in the client side, which is the browser. So when you have heavily developed the components and the logics JavaScripts, the performance is a little bit a problem. When you user loads the page, you have to waiting for the JavaScript rendering the content. Before that, you cannot see anything. That leads another problem of search engine optimization. The Google, when they try to crawl your page, the JavaScript haven't been loaded, so you basically get the Google can't get anything of your content. We are building a content website, so that's very important for us. Also, that's the BFF backend for frontend. The architecture we are using actually building the general purpose API, which may not only used by our front-end website, can be used in the other purpose in the future. Also, we maybe integrate with other microservices. So build some logic in our front-end side is required. So there's some code works there. So so that's coming the server-side rendering. So JavaScript actually can not only render in the browser, it can render in the server as well by using Nuxt.js, and the Vue.js have a SSR API in the core. But this one will solve the problem, so we need to move to the SSR. So basically, if you're using the API in the core, it's still a little bit too much work, and so that's why Nuxt.js come out. So Nuxt.js basically is a Vue.js project framework, but it solves the problem for the build a universal application. A universal application which is made your code can render both in server and client. So you just write once and solve all the problems. Also it's a great framework, so that means they provide a structure of best practice for you to organize your code. The next guy, would you like to?
Well, so in that last graph we saw problem, solution, and I should stand here. The other benefits to that solution of Nuxt is its standards, and for the same reason that we feel like Drupal's a good fit for so many things, is because there's standards. Standards across the project, community standards, coding standards, infrastructure standards, the way you lay out your file system, components, it's consistent. And so that gives us as developers comfort knowing that each time we step from a project to another project, or if we want to onboard people, it's easy to explain and it's easy, well, there's a system for them to follow. It's not random and there shouldn't be exceptions. Shouldn't be. The other thing is community. Again, like Drupal, there's a community that's active. There's official Nuxt modules. There's also contributed modules, just like in Drupal. So you have people contributing back, not just to Nuxt, because it's an open source product, but contributing modules to extend it. And those modules follow the same standards. There's the active community that reviews them, tests them, and popularity a lot of the time will dictate the ones that work best and gain notoriety. So that gives confidence in the community. Like I mentioned before, the development community is really important to the success of the product. So we want to follow those standards and be open and transparent so that the product improves with feedback. We mentioned before today, they worked on WorkSafe and they did a lot of the groundwork. Tim was involved much more in the project than I was at this stage. So do you want to, components? Components.
I take over this part. Yeah, so this is a view pattern library we mentioned before. So I'm trying to. So we're using Storybook, which can build a style guide website. The Vue.js is a JavaScript framework we're using to build our component. And the atomic design, we're trying to follow the methodology to organize our file. So that's this one. Yes. So this is how the style guide looks like. This is built by the Storybook framework, which is very popular, I think, both working React, Vue.js, and other languages. I'm not sure.
Because it's a Facebook thing, isn't it?
Storybook?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Yeah, yeah, it's open source. So yeah, there's so many. Yeah, it's an ecosystem. It's very good ecosystem. So everybody work together. It's changing fast as well. So yeah, so here you can see just one component. We can see some structure here. The atoms, molecules. Basically, this part in our internal process, we hand over to the designers and the UX research. So we design, we developers now manage this atom atomic design structure, follow the UX and the designers. Whatever they made, we organize them here. And what we made is we made the sketch file into a component. In here, you can see there's demo for alert component. Below there's some code example, which is how the view component code will look like. And then this is the data. So how the component, the data structure will be. So you take a title, a type, a link, alert ID. Yeah. So the cool things is here. Okay, it's too small anyway. So there's a lot of plugins we can use to build our style guide when we have variations. So like this alert have different variations for say flag.
And
you see the icon changed.
These properties down here are mapping into those properties
here.
in the story source.
Yeah, so it's called knob, so you can change to different. You see the color, the theme changed. Yeah. So in this way, and it provides a very nice testing tools for accessibility, also for like integrate with JS, take the snapshot test. Yeah, there's a lot of possibility, and it's still keep improving. Yeah, this is a little bit off. I'm back to our talk. Yeah, so just show you what is the pattern library we build. This is actually a separate project, so we decouple them, take them out of our Nuxt. That makes it can be reused not only by our Nuxt, also can be used by others. Also, it can be have its own version. Let's go to the next. So, because we're building multiple websites, say we will have in our DPC internal, we will have 40 to 50 websites. They all using the same pattern library. That's the project we are trying to make. It's a single digital presence. So all the components is same. When the user click a button, it's always the same. So it's not confusing the user. But yet different users, different websites, they want different theme. They have their own branding. So we're using the SAS variables. We provide a theme file. They can override in each Nuxt. So just like this, it's very easy. And there's furthermore, this is just an example for branding color palette, but you can override a lot, everything mostly, but it's something is not we recommending. So the next is about how we integrate the Drupal JSON API with Nuxt. So I show you a diagram here. This one? Yeah. Think about there's, I'm just showing the flow. So this is the user. In the browser, they send a request to view outside. It can be different website, and we just some examples. So the request, and we moved all our backend for front-end logic code into a module. So that makes we can build a distribution. It's similar to Drupal distribution builder profile, but in Nuxt you are able to do that as well. So yeah, we take everything out to a Nuxt module. In Nuxt, actually the instance for each website, only some overriding like SAS file to override theme or custom component if they want.
Can I talk to the Nuxt module a bit?
Sure.
Can I interrupt you for sorry. That I think has been our biggest challenge. Providing a module that sets basic functionality, but also separates it from the needs of the individual project. So allowing each individual project then to override this module. And that's where the majority of effort's gone in the last 2 to 3 months. Making sure that we're not restricting the configurability of a project, because we're finding as new vendors come on, they have ideas, they're things that we haven't thought of, and we need to be able to provide them the opportunity to override what we think is the right way to do something. And so for them to provide their own modules, load, configuration, and we'll see that in a couple of slides' time with the mapping of components. Do you want to jump?
Yeah, so continue on here. So you can see this is backend API, Drupal. This is our view pattern library. It's a separated project. Also, because Nuxt is not our front end is not using any backend, not any database. So we store anything we store in the Vuex, which is how we store the data in front end. So go a little bit more in the BFF part. The reason we build this way is there's a lot of thing to do here. You can see the purple one, which is our custom Nuxt module. The APIs we are using have the Drupal API, also have Elasticsearch API, and in the future, at the moment we are using that too. In the future, there's another coming out, which is for the map service. So, and you can think there's more and more microservices in the future we will use, and and they are not built for only for us to use. So the data structure, the developers, they are not coupled with our work. They are not knowing any details what we are building in the UI. So our UI component data structure doesn't have to be coupled in with any other API. So this module is doing the work to adapt all the APIs as UI requires, which is maintained by the same UI front-end team. Then we go to the mapping. The mapping actually is part of this Nuxt module work. It's adapting the API. So you can see here, the right side is Drupal, and you can see the diagram is horrible. It's too small.
They're essentially paragraphs.
Yeah, that's how it looks like in the Drupal paragraphs. Paragraph we build different component in different paragraphs. You can see here is basic text, which is a WYSIWYG, and another is accordion, another basic text, another card navigation, and we need to transform into the front end look like this, which is using the view component. So the purple place, what we are doing is building a mapping, and which have to be easy to configuration extending, because different project may have different requirement. What I borrowed is the idea from Drupal migration. I got some migration experience in Drupal 8, which is I think it's a really good idea to do the work. In Drupal, it's a YAML file, so you just configure what you want mapping the different things. So in here you can see we did the similar thing, just mapping what in the backend. Say this is paragraph card navigation in Drupal. We mapped them to the REPL component card navigation. Then mapping the data structure. That's it. And the layout we put here is because in the headless Drupal structure, we think in backend they don't need to manage any layout things, so the layout is controlled and the styling all controlled in front-end team. That makes the UI consistent. So during the mapping, we face issue with WYSIWYG. So WYSIWYG is a little bit different. So you can see here we have a paragraph called field paragraph body. It's actually a WYSIWYG content field. But WYSIWYG content is rendered in Drupal already. So you can see we made some plugins in the WYSIWYG. We can add different component like blog post buttons. But actually they're using Drupal theme to render it. So when we get it from the JSON API, it's already a rendered HTML with all the classes and templates in Drupal. So it's very hard to make them render in a view component. So what we have to build, the solution we figured out is add another WYSIWYG transpiler. We also made it can be using plugins. So when we have more new components, we just write more plugins. So in the example, you can see in the HTML we find a button class, then we render it in transpile it into a view component, and if it's a element, we render it into a view link component, and the result is good. Yeah, so the Nuxt modules that we have talked a lot, it's basically heavily reused to solve our problem of reusable, flexible. Yeah, so we've already made modules. How to use these modules, you have to have some custom configurations. So Nuxt provided the configuration API to looks like this. So this is our module. You can just configure different backend. Yeah, we have some modules, so you can enable this or disable this. It's very easy to use. This makes distribution possible. Yeah, so the next one is web forms. I think web forms in Drupal works well, and it's awesome. And Drupal have very powerful form API. It's really powerful because there's so many things there, and yeah, everything's dynamic. You just give an array and it render form. And in Vue.js, in our project, how we can make it, because we are using decoupled, and everything in Drupal theme is not available here. So this is how we made. In the Drupal, you will see a web form have different fields, form elements. So what we did actually, we find a project called Vue Form Generator, which is what we found is basically the same thing in Drupal Form API. So in Form API, it's PHP in Drupal, it renders a form array into a theme, a real form, but the Vue.js have a similar thing. All we did is just wrap that Vue Form Generator and mapping the Drupal data structure to the Vue Form Generator data structure. And yeah, that's it. But there's still have something it's quite hard to do is the Drupal Form API is too powerful, too many things there. We can only deliver by requirement. So at the moment we maybe only have 11 form elements, and we are adding a little bit by a little bit based on the content team requirement. If they didn't require that form element, we just leave it there. Yeah, because based on the budget now, we definitely not possible to reproduce all the work in form API. The next is another important part, search. Guy, would you like?
There's really in our project, we've just added an interface between the front end and the Elasticsearch cluster that we've got. We bypass Drupal entirely. Drupal, of course, indexes the index, but we don't go through Drupal when we're performing search queries. And all the interface really does is delivers a generic way to build queries. So we'll have different components. Sorry, we've got a configurable component for search that could search across different content types with different filters, and it incorporates all of these things that Tim's just touched on, which is the Vue Form Generator, and then the web forms. So to do all of that, we've really just provided the plumbing and hopefully an easy way for vendors to be able to implement search on the different projects, essentially just copying a component and customizing it for the content type and filters that they need. And that's done using the Elastic JavaScript client, and then we just we instantiate the client and then pass whatever parameters we need to through to its search methods. And then we move on to testing. What can we say about testing? We've got unit tests in place, so that's chunking all of the functionality into its as small as possible tests. There's a lot more coverage that we need to provide. We've now got a goal of defining all of our tests using Cucumber So essentially what everyone's used to with Behat, we want to abstract away a bit so that the people in our testing team can write all of the acceptance criteria in Behat, and then that's going to apply both to our back end and our front end and our BFF. And I think we've gone just over time. So now maybe we could go and have a look at some questions. Do you feel like you've covered everything?
Yeah.
All right. Where did...
Have you checked the model?
Super quick one. Indexing content from Drupal, did you just use the Search API module?
Yeah, and Elasticsearch connector. I don't think we've had to patch it. I don't think we've done anything. We have come across one thing, which is we've recently migrated to a different database hosting structure, and that renamed our indexes. So Elasticsearch connector uses the Drupal database name to name the index. And so when we moved to AWS, the database name changed and our index changed. Oh, great. So there should be a patch for that at some time soon.
You mentioned using new form generator. Does that support any client-side validation built in, and did you connect that through to the Drupal web form?
That's a question for you, Tim.
It does do client-side.
Sorry, could you repeat the question again?
Just about validation of form fields, did you connect that through from Drupal web form?
The validation, yes. There's a lot of work can do. View form generator has the validation API, so you can use that one and add your custom one as well. Then in the mapping, you see the mapping before, we get all the data structure, which includes the validation data in the information in the Drupal. So we can just, at the moment, we map like a require and some, I think is the phone, email kind of things. Yeah, for email we do the email validation. But for Drupal there's modules to provide custom validation. This is going too far, so yeah, it's very complicated. So it have to be support one by one, but it's doable. Everything is possible in this way. Yeah, thanks. Is it?
No, that's it. I think that we've got one question, Stuart.
It's not a joke, I'm seriously asking.
I don't know where they've drawn that from, but I guess...
Because like, I've been thinking about that for the thing I'm working on. What is the best way of defining what a group of, what a variation is?
Yeah,
To
variations.
me, I think variation makes sense, but clearly this term exists, and I'm
If
just wondering why.
If anyone's having trouble reading that, it says, with regards to Storybook, do you know if knob is a standardized term or specific to Storybook? I hadn't come across it before Storybook, but I guess they're leading the way in this sort of style guide, interactivity. It's such a cool product, it makes it so easy. So I guess their success will determine if that term sticks, probably. I don't know.
Did you make up BFF? Because it's awesome.
No. But there was a lot of inspiration.
Any questions? You can ask in Slido as well. Not too late.
Are you using decoupled router module?
We are not using that. Actually, I think I missed that part in the router. So basically what we did, actually the router is all dynamic. So when the HTTP request say they want to visit the contact us page, and we just pass this to the JSON API. So JSON API will tell us this page exists or not. If it's not exist, give us a 404. If it exists, it will give us the data. So yeah, so we get all the data in JSON API way, which Drupal way. So that's it. We didn't store any router, but we have another developer. he made the Nuxt in not a universal application. The Nuxt can be rendered in, can be generated a static website. So it's serverless. So it's just generate a bunch of HTML. So with dynamic route, you still can do that. What he have made is he built another service to grab all the Drupal database routers and render them back. Eventually you have to like regenerate it every hour. And if you want to see the real time, it's a little bit like preview. It's really hard. So at the moment we implement in universal application. Yeah.
An interesting thing about the router is that only last week we made that configurable per project and a default set in our Nuxt.js module, which allowed us to define certain parameters for how the URI query parameters are handled by default, but then a project can override those. I thought that was really useful for search, for the way the filter query parameters get added to the path. Yeah. It's good time.
Thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank you.